Hi everyone. You know, I come from a time when I was a child in Portugal when we had a dictatorship. And this dictatorship was sort of ferocious. We had a powerful political police, a sort of a secret police that controlled people, that had lots of informants. And at that time, we knew that it was really a bad idea to just say freely everywhere how we felt, what we thought about the government or the society or whatever was out there. We knew that we could safely and at will talk about things that were attuned to our government, attuned to the Catholic Church at the time, attuned to the dictatorship, attuned to the sort of youth of the government. Uh, and we knew that whenever we were to discord, whenever we dared to say something against the government, the policies, even the war in our colonies, we would be at high risk. Informants were everywhere, and they would say something about what we did, what we talked about, and then big trouble. Now, that was a time of dictatorship, and this is typical of dictatorships. We know for sure that during the Nazi times in Germany, it was equally welcome to say nice stuff about Nazis and about racism and about discrimination and to say bad things against the Jews or black people. And it was very good to say publicly things about the nobility of the Aryan race, and it was a bad idea to say something against it, or against Hitler, of course. Now, that was a ferocious time of dictatorship, also in Portugal. Nowadays, however, we think we live in democracy, but it's no longer just like that. Because during the pandemic, namely, we have been sort of trained, prepared to be very afraid of discarding the dominant ideas, the dominant narrative conveyed by the mass media, by movies, by the discourses from the politicians, and probably by the World Economic Forum and the like. We learned that we could be segregated, expelled, we could lose our jobs, we could be the target of ostracism from other people, we could lose friends and so on if we had different ideas, different opinions. Now, democracy typically used to be a government system that would favor the growth and development of people thanks to free expression. People would be free to be themselves, to have different, deviant ideas eventually. They would be free to have their own experience, to make their own decisions. During the pandemic, and not just during the pandemic, however, we learned that things were not like that. There was a dominant idea, and going against it became very dangerous. Nowadays, people are still afraid, like they were in the time of the Portuguese dictatorship. Nowadays, people became afraid of saying how they feel exactly, of sharing their doubts, of having their own ideas, of having eventually some prejudice, but also some different and creative ideas. Because they are afraid of losing their jobs, they are afraid of being segregated, they are afraid of being targeted by insult, by easy comments. even by government services. And the trouble is that we learned that recently in a different way than we did in the past. Supposedly, this happened during democracy. I see everywhere people who hesitate to just think on their own, to think by themselves, and to express it. They seem to prefer to wait to understand what is the dominant narrative, what is the dominant way of thinking, what is acknowledged and conveyed by governments, by the mass media, by the movies, by general propaganda. Let's keep in mind that nowadays, virtually almost all the media are the property of major corporations everywhere in the Western world. Journalism, to some extent, is dead. Journalism used to be a search for truth. Now it's no longer like that. Now it's mostly whatever the corporations that own the media tell the journalists to talk about or not to talk about. Now, I see everywhere people who prefer to wait to see where the majority seems to be going and where are the sort of approved ideas so they can say stuff attuned to those dominant approved ideas, and they are very afraid to say something else. This concerns ideas about sexuality, about war. Namely, nowadays, lots of people will be extremely afraid to say something like, look, the Israelis are killing lots and lots and lots of children and civilians. Or look, they are killing a lot more children and civilians than the Russians did until now in Ukraine. This is dangerous to say, it's quite unpopular. Let's instead say that no, the Israelis are defending themselves. They are probably. And they are killing people to try to target the terrorists. Well, I don't want to discuss that. Actually, I really cannot truly and deeply evaluate what is going on. I don't have the real knowledge. I have propaganda and counter propaganda, and that does not serve me well. What I know is that people are very afraid, again, as in past dictatorships, to express themselves about society, politics, war and peace, about economy, about even their needs. People became very afraid. People prefer to wait to be told how to think, what to say, how to feel, and so on. It feels safer, but that is the death of democracy. And it's happening. What we are going through is an economical global dictatorship, and it's ferocious in its own terms. It's quite manipulative. Unfortunately, colleagues of mine, namely, have been hired long time ago and until now to help politicians and corporations know how to manipulate people, how to send people like cattle to the destinies they want them to go, how to manipulate people into consuming the products that are to be sold, but also to consume the information that is sent by the media and by social networks. So let's consider this. Let's move away from the death of democracy. And for this, we must need solidarity, openness to the other human being, tolerance for people. We must be interested in diversity, not in the globalist manipulation of people into a sort of big group of cattle like people. We should be aware that love, compassion, sharing are becoming revolutionary once more. And in this area, we can do our revolution. And this is what I wanted to talk about. So, as usual, if you like, share, subscribe the channel, say something. See you.